Hello again, guys, and welcome. My name's Matt Beaton, and I am the author of the Halloween Parade, part of the Monstacademy series of books for younger readers. Today I'm going to give you a reading of Chapter 1. If you like it, you can buy it at the link below or directly from my website. Here we go. Chapter 1. The Letter. To most children, their school seems perfectly ordinary. I imagine that yours is the same. I bet that when you turned up for school this morning there was little chance of you bumping into a werewolf. There are probably not many vampires in your class. The chance of you sitting next to a ghost or a banshee in maths is, I would guess, very remote. This was also true of St. Agatha's Primary School. St. Agatha's was a lovely small school with a tree-lined playing field and with just enough children to keep it interesting, but not quite enough to be big and scary. Trixie Grimble, our heroine, is 9 3/4, and until recently, St. Agatha's had been her school. It had all started with a letter, as these things so often do. This particular letter had arrived at the beginning of July in a neat brown envelope with a lovely handwritten address on the front, and was stamped with the mark of Wexbridge Borough Council. It was plainly labelled for the attention of Trixie Grimble. However, Trixie's mum, upon finding the letter lying there on the doormat, had done what mothers so often do when they think that they know best. She had opened it herself. Dear Miss Grimble, we are so sorry to inform you that due to budget cuts at Wexbridge Borough Council, we are closing St. Agatha's Primary School. However, please do not panic. We have been able to find you a place at Monroe's Academy for the Different. We do hope that you enjoy your time there. They are very much looking forward to welcoming you into their halls. Yours sincerely, Mr. Bothwell Oxelton. P.S. In order to make up for this terrible inconvenience, I have enclosed a coupon for a year's supply of toilet paper from Keith's Toilet Emporium on the High Street. Well, you can imagine the scream that Mrs. Grimble let out upon reading the letter. It quite disturbed Mrs. Burbage, the nosy next-door neighbour who was stood near to the open kitchen window listening for tidbits of information whilst pretending to trim her bush. Trixie had been peacefully sleeping in her bedroom when her mum's shriek had echoed through the house and rudely woken her from a lovely dream. Leaping from her bed and racing down the stairs, nearly tripping over her ancient and overweight pet cat Snot in the process, Trixie found her mum in quite the tiz. What is it, Mum? She asked sleepily. Is that a letter? It's addressed to me, she shouted, suddenly awake and noticing the open and now empty brown envelope slowly soaking in a bowl of cereal where her mum had dropped it. It had been torn neatly along the top edge. Trixie snatched the note from her mum's unresisting hand and read it for herself. Monroe's Academy for the Different, Trixie gasped, not believing the evidence in front of her very nose. I can't go there, and you can't make me. You do know what they call it, don't you? Monstacademy, she continued, quite agitated because, quite rightly, nobody likes moving to a new school. Trixie loved her mum in the way that all children do, and she was sure that her mum loved her back in her own way. They'd never been very close, preferring to go about their business on their own and occasionally meeting up for dinner in the kitchen. Trixie had long believed that her mother would prefer it if they both had separate houses to themselves and didn't get under each other's feet so often. Now it seemed she would get her wish. Trixie had quite a nice group of friends at St. Agatha's, and she didn't really think that she needed any new ones. Certainly none that went to Monstacademy. And what was worse was that Monroe's Academy for the Different was just that. It was a school for the different. Now, when you or I think about people that are different, we might think of somebody who is considerably shorter or very much taller than most, or who might have a head full of vivid purple hair, or perhaps who has a large boil on the end of their nose just waiting to be popped, or maybe even somebody who looks just a little bit like a potato. That is not the type of different child that Monroe's Academy for the Different usually takes in. You see, Monroe's was really very different indeed. Many of the pupils who attended were what you or I might call the supernatural. Wait, I hear you asking, do you mean that there is a school for superheroes and those with special powers? Were you to ask me that question, I would simply scoff and say, of course not, that's ridiculous. Instead, Monstacademy is a school for those of a spookier nature, such as vampires, werewolves, and even the odd witch or wizard. Trixie was all too aware of the type of people that attended Monstacademy, There were always rumours at school about how their vampire pupils would be sent down to the village for sucking practice, or the bogey boys and girls would be instructed to hide under the beds of normal boys and girls to practice making them scream with fear. She didn't like it one bit. "You know as well as I do that I've wanted to get Trixie into a boarding school for a long time," her mother had said. "I never meant somewhere like this, though. I had high hopes for Snuffling Berries or Blimpingtons. They'll drink her blood and turn her into a zombie. What will the neighbours think if she's off flying around all night as a bat?" She'd sobbed to her boyfriend Rob when he'd returned home from work on that fateful day. Trixie's dad had run away with his rock band when she was tiny, and her mum's current boyfriend Rob had been living with them for a year now. Trixie didn't like him one bit. His company manufactured toothbrush bristles. Rob's job was to sell them to all sorts of companies in all sorts of exotic countries, and he often spent days and weeks away from home. He was also the sort of adult who thought he was really good at talking to children, but in fact he was boring and patronising and didn't actually like spending any time with them. He'd made this very clear when Trixie overheard him talking to her mum on the stairs one evening, a few days after the letter had arrived. "Now listen," he began reassuringly. "I'm going to be working away a lot for the next year, and you don't really want to be left alone to look after a growing girl, do you? Monstacademy is a boarding school. She'll be living there. You'll have all that time to yourself. You know how you've always wanted the time to train a cat circus? Well, now you'll have that time. Besides, she'll be much better off around other children. She'll get bored here, just you two." "Well, there is that. In a way, it would be kinder to send her, but what about the other children? I've heard that they have vampires and zombies and everything else. They might try to suck her blood." "Well, everybody needs a hobby, dear," he'd replied, clearly unconcerned about Trixie's neck or the threat of eternal damnation. "Besides, those are just rumours. It's probably just a few extra hairy kids, and some of those moody ones that like to wear black and listen to depressing music. You know the ones I mean." "Teenagers?" offered her mum. "Yeah, probably." Rob trailed off, distracted by a most terribly important business call on his mobile phone. And that had been that. Rob had persuaded her mum that a little time to herself would be a good thing. In the end, even though she was never comfortable with Trixie mixing with what her mother had called their sort, she decided that having her out of the house was worth the risk. She'd even spent time looking for kittens that looked suitably athletic. Trixie's displeasure had only been matched by Snots, who now spent most of his time on top of the fridge in protest. "You'll make lots of new and exciting friends," her mum had argued after one particularly bad fight. "But Mum," she'd wailed, "I'm nearly 10 years old. I'm pretty sure I've got all the friends I'll ever need." So it had continued throughout the summer. Eventually the holidays had drawn to an end, uniforms and equipment had been bought, and Trixie soon found herself stood at the front door to her new life. Okay, thanks for watching. Remember, if you like what you've heard, you can buy Monstacademy, The Halloween Parade on Amazon or direct via my website now. And don't forget you can also buy my other book, The Spyglass and the Cherry Tree. Thanks very much. See you later.